Hello and welcome one and all to the show that is all ball and absolutely loving everything in the Premier League, the most popular league, the most popular sport in the world. And man, I'm pretty locked and loaded as a Arsenal fan. We've got a heck of a day to go through. We saw Arsenal kind of pulling away like a runaway Cybertruck. Maybe we'll just say Tesla made me say that. I don't think they're pulling away at all, but City did kind of trip over their own shoelaces against Forest, including a very heroic block by Forest at the end, right before the end of full time. They kind of really made a lot of Arsenal fans very excited. And then the relegation scrap that I know we've talked about, Daniel, as long with Linden, but it's actually getting very interesting. Anyways, Mr. Stateside here, Zach, along with my guy, Daniel. We're going to go through all the things that happened today. We're going to go through Daniel's Level B superpower and more. Daniel, how we doing? Let's just say, can you give us a hint of one that's not going to be your Level B superpower? Like, is there one that maybe is second, third place? Is there someone that you would, if you go to a karaoke bar and absolutely slam and smash a song, I prefer a crowd favorite. Do you have anything on your mind there?
One that would be good, but I don't think I could pull off would be like a Teddy Swims, being able to kinda hit that note that he does. I don't know if that's a vibe I could pull off, so that would be one I'd enjoy listening to, but don't think it'd be for me.
Heard that. Don't know who Teddy Swims is, but here we are. All right, coming back right after this very important commercial break, we're going to jump into the is it happening? Is Arsenal really going to do this? They're 7 points clear. We're also going to go into some of the other top three. Man United, is the honeymoon over? Manchester City, will they be able to regain that form they've had over so many years? So we'll jump into it right after this. All right, welcome back to the Football Ball Podcast. Still here with Daniel. All right, so we talked about Arsenal to start this off. This has been something of a dialogue that Daniel and I have had throughout this whole season. Even Lennon, to that matter, my cuz, that Arsenal seems like a team that can win the Premier League. And a lot of times when you watch Arsenal on days even like today, it does not seem like that's going to happen. Even when we started off the game, watching it here, Brighton obviously has a good setup, obviously is set up for this game emotionally as well with their coach, driving the point home that Arsenal is not playing maybe in an efficient or an enjoyable way. We'll get into that a little bit later with Daniel. But we have a situation where Bukayo Saka, on his 300th appearance, it's been a while since we had a goal from outside of much less 10, but 20 yards. Nails it in off of the deflection, 6-hole the goalkeeper, and that was the only shot on target Arsenal had, and they won 1-0. That being said, people don't like it, people may not enjoy it, but they are top of the Premier League, and now they even really increased that league over Manchester United, Manchester City, and the other top four members, as they've kind of all fallen, to the wayside. So it's one of those where even as an Arsenal fan, it does get a little tough to watch. I can tell you that scoring a goal early in a soccer game, we're talking about 90 minutes plus 7 minutes on each halftime. So 114 minutes, almost 2 hours of watching soccer where your team scores in the first 9 minutes. Especially this Arsenal team, this very cautious, meticulous, and honestly safeguarded Arsenal team with the roster they have and the competitions they're playing in, it does get tough. So while I hear, some of the counter arguments of why Arsenal may be some of the worst champions we've ever had and, an unenjoyable product to watch for the neutral fan, it does take, Daniel, not to filibuster too long, it does take me back a little bit to how Arsenal was perceived not only 5 years ago as being weak and ineffectual and forcenal and always kind of aiming for just good enough to make Champions League, but not good enough to ever to actually challenge to be a champion. And so looking back on that, seeing where Arsenal is, 7 points out, about 8 games to play for Arsenal, 9 games for Manchester City, it does kind of make me smile through the tears of fearing this could be another situation where Arsenal hook, crook, injury can't close it out. But for today, I'm pretty happy. What are your thoughts on this game and overall Arsenal solid play to get to this point in the league?
I think at this point in the league, they are really only going to be in a situation that they don't win the title. I think if they feel that it's so wrapped up that they prioritize some of the other competitions that they're still in, start to maybe a little bit take their top of the table league for granted with a desire to win multiple trophies this season, and in doing so, slip up in some opportunities they probably should be getting 3 points. But you mentioned scoring the goal first. They are just excelling at this ability to find a goal in whatever method they feel is most analytically, high chance of scoring them a goal, and then having a team commitment, athleticism, an ability to defend a lead for it feels I mean, it feels like it could be like 2, 3 games in a row. They could go at times without conceding when they are playing in that style. They did have the one slip up with Wolves, but it does feel like they're kind of back in that full confidence, and they have always shown to seemingly play their best when there is a little bit more of a lead that's maybe a less pressure situation. So, he had to let it that out, por favor, but I would say, yeah, definitely feeling some validation for picking Arsenal as the league champions when we had that conversation earlier. And it did seem that none of the Arsenal supporters, even at the time, were really fully willing to kind of buy in that, yes, this would be the year. But it just feels that they've had that team that has the ability to respond to anything with the depth. They have solutions for if this position isn't working out, if this player gets injured, if the other team plays where their strongest players in this role, having this amazing ability to have a solution for any type of problem they're facing feels to me almost like their route to success. And I know we can talk a little bit later on, is that entertaining? Is it not? But they are absolutely elite at doing that. And I think just over time, you have the best team tend to rise to the top of the table and have the deepest teams be able to sustain what is a very difficult, grueling period from a physical standpoint. So it looks all but wrapped up for them at this point, I would say.
Oh God. Well, I don't want to agree with that, but I think you did hit on something very important. This offensive charge by Arsenal has been tried 3 years, and it's been foiled mostly by defense. And some of this is gonna come down to that Man City game coming up, not the Carabao Cup, but the actual Premier League game, and you make a good call out there. If Arsenal does get, in a situation where they either take their eye off the ball at the Premier League or they decide, God forbid, the Premier League is no longer winnable, I could see that be something. I don't know if that's exactly what you're saying, but I could see that could be something that would cost them, and maybe end up with 0 trophies if they have that mindset. But for me, I think that the back 4 and their ability to start with, Timber, Mascara, Gabriel, Hincapié, and then as Mascara gets that early yellow card and they have to rotate into a Norin or, my beautiful Italian friend in Arsenal as well. Like they do have that defensive flexibility and strength backed up by their belief in David Raya. I'll pronounce it in the way that the Spaniards do, but I think that's huge, and I think that does give them a chance. So I think you're right about that. And does that make them boring? Probably does. Who cares if you're winning, right? We've got a Brighton manager that's complaining about the style of play of Arsenal, the league leader, before and after the game. Something that you probably get maybe in years past with very, very stodgy managers, but kind of rare to see in this day and age, especially from, I don't know, I would say a more stylistic manager than a absolute British hard ass manager. But I digress. I don't want to get too far away from that. Um, Today, it was an ugly game, and if we can just briefly touch on the ugliness, maybe of this game, of this season, of this campaign. I've heard complaints that, hey, it's the lowest goal scoring campaign for a league leader. I've heard complaints about just in general. I mean, we don't even talk about the first sorry, the second Wolves game, but the first Wolf games when it took an own goal to beat Wolves, regardless of where they are now and being a very successful and kind of really dynamic team when it comes to beating Liverpool, beating Aston Villa, tying Arsenal, having some life to them, maybe bringing Tottenham into a picture that they don't want to believe could be even possible. But I would be remiss if not to say this is an entertainment product. This is an entertainment sport. And if we want to watch something beautiful, like we thought with the Barcelona days or, even the Arsenal days of years past, or um, in a certain way, the Dortmund days of years past, where it's a philosophy to play beautiful soccer, and that is the way that you should win. Maybe as the patron saint of Arsenal, Arsene Wenger would believe. What do you think this means to this league today? Is this a just reactivist perspective from other fans and maybe media to diminish Arsenal playing more pragmatically? Or do you think that this is something that is more systemic where yes, the Premier League is performing well internationally, but over the long term, this is going to be something that costs their player development and their overall global audience?
I think first, just to touch on again the continued depth of Arsenal that we talk about. You mentioned all the high level defenders that they have at their disposal there, and didn't even mention, I think, Miles Skelly, didn't even mention Ben White, who in recent years have been like key players for them in certain stretches of the season and really being just one of the main kind of automatic names on the team sheet at that point in time. It does just highlight their depth. William Saliba, maybe the best center back in the world right now, not even on the bench today, and they're still able to have a shutout on the roads. Yeah, the quality and depth of their defenders, it is pretty remarkable. I think in terms of the entertainment part of it, for sure, probably the average answer would be that it is less entertaining, but I think there is a lot going on at the same time. And a big part is kind of the media feedback, the social media reels that you see does seem to be a lot more of Arsenal in terms of just their style than recent champions of the past. And some of that does feel like it's treating Arsenal fans in that way, maybe being subconsciously like used to viewing them as this punching bag for the last however many years. But some of it I think definitely is a little valid as well. I was going back and forth
Sure.
between the Barcelona Atletico Madrid match and the different Premier League ones, and it is more entertaining in a way. In the I think the style of play you see there does still
Madrid
seem
almost
to
conceding 4 goals?
well, it does feel like that there's this greater desire to attack and to take chances going forward, take potential risks at the you know, inherent expense at the same time that you can be vulnerable to counterattacks. You can't allow other teams to have a way to hurt you. And just that ability has seemingly gone away from the Premier League in terms of how many players are running it opposing players on the dribble, maybe in their own half, how many players are trying to have success in a really tight window close to their own goal. And it's just not as many as maybe there had been in the past, but the athleticism in the Premier League is just starting to reward players that are willing to work hard and willing to battle and fight while still having an elite technical ability that is going to be required at that level. And I think that is what
Yeah.
the Arsenal and even to a sense Man City and a lot of the other Premier League teams have evolved into this version of really being solid all around, not having any glaring weaknesses because as really exciting and fun and electric it is watching someone like Lamine Yamal right now go at defenders. I mean, his play in defensive set pieces and tracking back is
It's not soccer.
It is a weakness in some people's eyes, and that is just a weakness that Arsenal has looked to eliminate. So, what will happen in terms of the league that you had asked about is, I think, twofold. If they do continue to hold on, get the title, I think it is good for the league and healthy for the league to have a new champion. There was that clip I did see recently of like a former Premier League executive talking candidly after he was done with the league about how it did benefit the league financially and it was something that all the executives hoped for and pushed for of
Wow.
having different champions. And so I think that is a good,
The Man
healthy,
City
competitive
specifically.
change.
Yeah.
But the other part is I do think there is a serious chance that this results in some version of the FA, the refereeing, changing the product. I think that's just been historically what has made soccer a really good game throughout the years is when those moments come, they've been able to change the game in a way that doesn't feel like just a vastly different product, but takes away a boring aspect, whether if it's passing it back to a goalkeeper who can pick it up, very, very physical fouls not being cards. So removing the ability of, fun, skillful players as refereeing has gotten more strict over time.
Yeah, squad
There's been
requirements.
all these
Yeah.
examples of allowing the game to continue to be exciting. And it does feel like we're a little bit on the precipice of some change coming in the near future. I think the new offsides rule has been one of those, looking to start calling penalties for defensive contact in the box for set pieces. It used to be almost this kind of understood different set of rules from a physical combat standpoint when players were defending inside their own box. Potential changes of the clock in terms of how the clock works and adopting a more NBA style approach of ball in play. And all of those do kind of happen to center around what Arsenal has found as a way to efficiently limit any risk that they have as a team, and it just feels like this very impressive analytical machine in a way that is having success, and I think they'll take it if it does result in what's gonna be the first title in a really long time. I think the fans are on
Yeah,
board with that, the players are on board with that. There
absolutely.
is a very high level buy-in. It's just maybe not always as exciting as what some other moments could produce.
Sure. Like that's a lot to unpack, just like I gave to you. So let's start off with with the first part, right? It's interesting that this becomes something that not only the Brighton manager brings to attention, but also becomes the focus as far as like how teams want to win, right? What I would say is, yeah, I think there is an analytic aspect to it. There is a set piece coach with Arsenal that gets paid based off set piece goals. We know he's doing the analytics. Let's put that aside for a second. If we had to put Brighton in a profile, it would be an Arsenal esque profile, right? Or a Liverpool esque profile, or maybe even to a certain extent, it's a profile that was built off the Man City model where you're going to have a goalkeeper that can distribute from the back. You're going to have center backs that can also, have like a Dutch personality or acknowledgement, a German acknowledgement like Van Hecke, where they're going to be physical, but they can also play from the back. They've even built up Baliba was courted by Manchester United. We already have talked about James Milner on top of the legend Welbeck. But this is a team that's actually kind of built in the right way, not a way that's a very direct playing way that we would see from like the Stoke Cities or the Birminghams of the past. Like this is a pass forward, high pressing team that tried to take Arsenal to task in their own way and it almost succeeded. But unfortunately for them, there were just some small margins where they couldn't equalize or win the game. That's really all it was, right? This was not something where, Arsenal blew this game off the map. This was something that Brighton made horrible mistakes. This was as simple as a deflection and a goalie, you know, paying the price for that. So it is interesting to me to hear some of this because the Premier League has become a more conservative, points-driven game, which means that you're not going to open yourself up in the way that La Liga may with a stratified or stratospheric way the table plays out as far as the top and the bottom. That may be why the Italian league is going through more overhauls because that parity has become more relevant. But in Premier League, this is probably the most parodied season that we've seen, whether that because Arsenal is a league leader and playing a very defensive style, with a very low XG, turnout and winning these high leverage games sometimes, or whether it may be because teams like Man City, teams like Liverpool, teams like Arsenal, really like a lot of these high top teams are trying to really turn physicality, turn their financial advantage with coaches into things that can lead to 1 or 3 points. So I totally agree with you there. It is something that it's not great to watch, but it could be something that is really part of a new phase of the Premier League and this parity. Something that we see in American sports too. There's parity in American sports as far as the more money there is in American sports, the more parity is going to be. I won't even get into NIL, but even as something as simple as the NFL, right? We see things where a single offseason move with a defensive coach and a pragmatic conservative play style made by a genius of a head coach in the Seattle Seahawks can turn something into a low year, just like we're experiencing right now in the Premier League, right? No high horse returning champion like Liverpool, like Kansas City is going to come in and sweep everybody off their feet and take you to that final game where they know how to execute and win. It's going to be more of like the have nots historically stepping up and actually who's going to step up and be someone that's confident enough to win a league, right? So I totally agree with you with that. Outside of that, though, Daniel, right? If you had to put that all aside, if you had to pick a team, right? Would it be Manchester United outside of this brief fall, right? Like what it doesn't have Man United, but I'm just saying, like, if it wasn't Arsenal, if you're saying Arsenal, and you're not saying that, but if Arsenal wasn't the team that was most impressive this year, maybe the one that doesn't deserve it, could you say Man City with their faults? Could you say Liverpool with their faults? If I had to really pick one, and I will say this just to maybe give some cuz points, but Man United really has overcome a lot of obstacles this year and has played a very decisive style of football. And I don't care that they just got signed their Carragher and they're going to lose the first game that he was employed. But this does seem like a team that would be very scary if you were going to actually put them in a full season run with Carrick, you know, with Arteta in this diminished state, that they could actually have a chance. I mean, being this close to it does kind of scare me as an Arsenal fan or as any fan that Man United may be on the comeback if they just make few good choices. I don't know. Is that too far fetched?
Yeah, would be my short of it. I think, it just kinda has always felt to me like they've been more of a vibes team since Carrick took over in a really positive way of getting back to stuff they were more comfortable with, more familiar with, and I think having a lot of instant player upticks in their performance suggests that. Man, like, they have some guys that definitely can do some things, and a lot of their players are playing at a really high level right now and are full of confidence, but I think the challenge they would have is over the course of an entire season with now being in a spot where they'll be playing multiple competitions next year that they haven't had to have that physical toll lately. I think what they're going to show is just the lack of depth that they have compared to some of the other teams like Embuemo a lot. Nunez been playing really well lately. Esco's been on a really good streak of form, but
Oh, yeah.
it's not realistic for those guys to play 90 minutes for every match when they're in multiple competitions. And once those rotations start to come in or injuries unfortunately come into a potential picture, then you just don't see the solutions or next option up like you would for a Man City, Arsenal. In a way, Chelsea has that depth just with a
Oh, yeah, for
crazy
sure.
financial strategy and JV team that they have at their disposal. So I think that is what is hurting Man United right now, but definitely can't see them genuinely making a push. It just felt emotionally like it did kind of come back down to earth after the loss today, especially to a
Let's jump
10-man
yeah.
opponent, and
Yeah,
so
what do you think was the reason for that? Because it seemed a little bit like the West Ham game a couple weeks ago, where a lot of teams we've seen it across the whole league, where you play down to your competition or they play up to you, whatever it may be. But what do you think it was about a 10-man Newcastle team? Obviously, Newcastle playing in Newcastle, which is a big effing deal as far as not only the away side being like 3 rows fucking to Mars, but also on top of that, just an absolute banger of an environment. What do you think was hard to break through? Was it the quality? Was it the tension? Which one do you think it was?
I think most people would view it as a Man United negative, but I'll take the route of Newcastle positive. I think they're just really in a
Yeah,
spot
same.
in a spot of high confidence lately. I've had the chance to watch them in a few of their recent competitions, and I think they have been playing at a high level and sometimes, maybe even playing better than what some of the recent results have been. And so they seem to have just found a little bit of confidence lately and more self belief, felt maybe a little bit more fresh, even as well than what they had been in the previous months from a physical standpoint. So Eddie Howe seems to be a great person from what everyone says. So I'm really happy to
Really?
see that team kind of continue to fight for him. And yeah, I'm going to more give it to the credit of Newcastle and the supporters they had there on the
Yeah,
night, rather than
same.
viewing it as a huge letdown for Man United.
No, and I think that we underplay, or at least I underplay, like, the historic hatred of Man United for Newcastle, right? This is something that they
I hope to never
probably
have historic hatred at any point in my
yeah,
life from anyone.
yeah. As a Frenchman, good luck with that. But, like, as an American, also, yay, same thing. So, this is something where I think it's literally it's like going to a college football game, beating your rival. I'm not saying Newcastle's rival Sunderland isn't more important, but it's an ascending team that beat everybody they came across to this point. Newcastle, they're coming into their home, they win. You can just always feel the energy in that stadium, right? Like you can just always feel the energy in that stadium and Sunderland and some of these big stadiums. I mean, obviously, Old Trafford and Stamford Bridge and all these big ones, but I do believe that that was, to your point, more Newcastle closing the deal than it was United. United did look a little shaky. And I'll take your point as well that a full season definitely may not be that quality yet, but they do have the pieces to build that way. All right. Before we close out, move to the next portion of this. We've talked about a lot of the top three: Arsenal, Man City. If we want to go to Man City, I guess we can. I'll leave this open to you, but that was really just kind of it was a bad performance by Man City as far as the performance, the actual aspects of attack they had. You could probably blame the refs maybe for some situations where Holland was clipped or this or that or whatnot, but that's kind of the nature of VARs. They don't want to intervene too much, thank God. But anything you want to touch on for Man City before I ask for your actual final top three prediction?
I think the one part that kinda in my mind was before this week, like, okay, this will be Man City's route, as if the Premier League script writers, did get the
Right.
behind closed doors preview of, "Hey, this actually is Guardiola's last season, and we wanna have him go out on top," and then somehow, all of a sudden, calls and stuff start to favor that from an outcome standpoint, but I think we saw with a couple of the calls in the City Forest game, um, that didn't go Man City's potential
Yep.
way. I think there was a couple of calls in the Arsenal Chelsea game that have certainly been circulating on social media that maybe could have gone against Arsenal if that was really the goal of the Premier League script writers behind closed doors, but those didn't happen. And it does feel like that is one of those things too in the past that sometimes as a non-Arsenal supporter, fan, I can be truthful that like, yeah, maybe they were on the negative end of some of those calls in the past in a way that now they've, I think, tried to prepare to be able to deal with that, but have probably been maybe a little bit more beneficial lately than teams could be.
Definitely.
I think that was just really the only way I could see Man City winning it. I think now that they've shown that isn't in their cards, you see the cracks that just exist in their defensive play.
Oh,
The
yeah, for
level
sure.
of defender they have in terms of their back five. I won't say goalkeeper included because I think both Donnarumma and David Raya are at a very, very high level. But the back line and holding midfield play of Rodri post ACL injury just
Yeah, it's
isn't
tough.
at the same level as I think what Arsenal are showing. It's not at the same level athletically as what Chelsea is showing with some of the moments that Caicedo, Chalobah, Fofana can produce. I think just isn't what Man City is capable of. And the athleticism that other teams have in attack is going to at times expose that and is going to win out over that, on certain
Sure,
days. And I
sure.
think that's just what was kind of shown today at times in terms of how Nottingham Forest was able to fight that and expose that weakness in what was a more talented, higher budget team overall and allowed it to be a 2-2 draw at the end.
I mean, this is a team with Manchester City that, people talk shit. Hey, they cut these spring signings. It's like $1 billion, maybe just 100 million. Who knows? But I mean, Semenyo,
Man, their
great
spring signings
signing.
have been great. It's
Great
they
signings.
hit
Yeah.
on those.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Ghoulie? Yeah. I'm going to call him Ghoul because I call him I caught him talking to my Arsenal guys. It was all like, "Hey, you wanna come over here, blah, blah." But anyways, their spring signings absolutely hit. That is an absolute fear factor for everybody in the league, and that's what I brought up in our previous episode that I thought at some point their defense would be resolved, and to me, it's a weird question now. I don't wanna get too distracted, but and I know that they've got some very young defenders that have not worked out at all, and that may have cost their goals, and I totally get that. But we're talking about a team that's really built from the midfield, right? And we're talking about a team that relies now on not the midfield. They want to go from the goalkeeper to the wings or to the striker. And I do feel at some point like they are getting caught, or Pep's getting caught maybe in between two desires, right? The two desires a lot of the media is talking about. Do we want to play beautiful soccer? Do I want to play direct soccer that maybe can empower the best striker of all time? So, anyways, regardless, I love your points. I think they're very, very relevant. But I just want to call that out as well that they've made some great signings. They are a, you know, a hair's breadth away from being right into this final, as far as not only like the Carabao Cup, the FA, but also the Premier League. And then on top of all that, they've got the coach that's been there before, and they've almost got the mentality that makes you believe that they've got a chance. Okay. All right. So I've let you off the hook long enough. Currently
One
right
last
now.
point I wanna
Yep, go
touch on
for it.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
In addition to their legitimate possibility of winning a Champions League on the day,
Yeah. I mean, it's a hard bracket.
the amazing quality that Guardiola has shown to, as you mentioned it, like they have definitely done some of the same analytical type shift and played what can be advantages for Man City compared to other teams from a matchup standpoint. That matchup does at times have the simplicity aspect of we are really big, fast, and strong up top. And let's get at those guys and let them run.
Huge.
Somehow Guardiola, I feel like, has been immune to all of this criticism that Arteta and Arsenal have for what in some ways it's kind of been a very similar approach of both managers of making this shift to a more analytical type decision of how they're going to approach games rather than a joy free flowing entertaining with potential risks that both of them had maybe done more in the past. But somehow, yeah, like no one's given any, grief about it. And it's really all there for Arteta, I feel like, in all the questions. So I don't know how he's quite
Yep.
managed that within the press, but well done to him for that.
He's got some cachet built up, but if you were
True,
gonna
true.
say that Pep was a head coach in the NFL, right? It would be somewhat akin to not Bill Belichick, right? Not Andy Reid per se, It may be something more like a Sean Payton where you're just like,
I'm gonna take
yeah,
I like the
go for it.
question. I'm gonna say a more successful Pete Carroll. Just that really
Okay, you know what?
likable,
Yeah,
positive
yeah.
energy,
Defensive
just
minded.
nails it with the maybe not so much defensive not, but
Well,
nails it in
passing from
terms
the
of
back, yeah.
the talking with the press and being able to joke around with those guys and somehow always come up, with very likable clips and fun, quirky sound bites that
Yeah, showed it
they latch
in
on
every
to. I think
league.
they share that quality for
I mean,
sure.
he did Barcelona B, he did Barcelona A, Pete Carroll did NCAA, he did NFL. Yeah, I think that's a actually, Daniel, I think that's a fantastic perspective because he's nothing like Sean Payton. Sean Payton's a fucking asshole. So, okay. All right. Let's move on here. I'm not gonna let you off the hook. You distracted me with some very interesting insights, and I agree. I honestly think that Pep has gotten away with it a little bit, but I also think that if he didn't have the relationship with Arteta, he would not be getting away with it. And it's a weird thing to say, right? But it's really just more that he deflects those questions. He does not take them head on, as some other managers may do. So for Pep, he, I think, loves Mikel Arteta. And I truly mean that, right? I truly mean that. And that's why he's taking it just 10% lighter. And in that regards, when he can deflect to Arteta, deflect to Arsenal, and also just kind of say, "Hey, do you want to look at the 30 something trophies that I've won in my career here?" He's not getting that full attack. And as we've talked about before, Arsenal's kind of an easy target with a lot of things lacking, a lot of things hopeful, and still 2.5 months, 3 months to go. So, all right, not gonna let you out though. Top three, right? If you had to say it from here, 9 weeks out. Even for 9 weeks out for every team except for Arsenal that I see in the top five at least. We've got Arsenal number one, Man City number two, Man United number three, Aston Villa, and Chelsea as number five. So if you had to close out with a top three, you can obviously choose any team outside of this as well. If you want to go Wolves, Rocket Ship, what are you thinking for top three at the end of this year?
Definitely not Liverpool after having lost to Wolves this
I
week.
forgot I even named them. Yeah.
They're easy out. I'm gonna take I think Man United just on the basis of an easier schedule from the amount of competitions that they're competing in. I think that's gonna really allow them to not be as exposed as some of the other clubs when fatigue and injuries do continue to be a challenge for the rest of
Yep.
the season. So I'm taking Man United to finish it out and Ruben Amorim winning the saddest person in England award.
And if Amron isn't happy with millions of dollars in his pockets, then God bless him. Okay. All right. That is our discussion of the top three. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about the relegation battle and we'll close it out with some shenanigans. Be right back after this. All right. Welcome back to the Football Ball Podcast. And while we were away, Daniel and I were talking about Chelsea, and that was kind of my pick. Like, they're ways out. On 29 games played, 48 points. It's three behind Man United in third place. I guess not too far back. That's for me. I think they have so much talent. I just think they have so much talent. Outside the goalkeeper, I think they're an absolute stunner of a team. I think you can play past the goalkeeper if you win 2-1, 3-1. I know they got Wrexham coming up, so God bless them with Deadpool. Daniel, did you have any thoughts on Chelsea you wanted to add before we move on to kind of the bottom three perspective?
Over the ad break, Zach swayed me. João Pedro swayed me. So, man, it's just a team that, despite the kind of recent hiccups with Arsenal, did, I think, erase maybe a little unfairly some of the recent
I mean, they've
success that
only
they've
lost to
had.
Arsenal. That's only
Yep.
it. That's it.
Yeah. And I think the key for them in terms of finishing out the season is just if their back line is going to stay healthy. But I think when their first choice defenders are healthy, when their first choice attackers are healthy, it's a really fun team to watch. I'm glad they came up with solution to playing João Pedro a little higher after he had at times played deeper with previous clubs. I think that's just really been a fit that's kind of clicked right away. And yeah, if those guys can stay healthy and continue to stay together as a club, you can definitely see a potential future route for them to go on a run, not only to finish off this year, but maybe a potential title challenger in seasons to come as well. So, yep,
Yep.
Zach swayed me. I'm putting sorry, Man United, Chelsea as that third spot.
They've also got the just we'll give them the bump historically, right? They've found a way. Aston Villa, I still don't believe in it. We talked about the depth as well. Chelsea has the depth, right? They have the depth to outlast Aston Villa. I would dare say they have the depth to outlast Man United, right? So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. All right. Okay. So jumping in. All right. Jumping into the bottom 3 relegation race. This is, I would say, like, one of the more exciting ones. 40 is that magic number. Sunderland just hit 29 games in, 40 points. They, and God bless Fulham and Bournemouth and Everton and Brentford, have all pretty much been confirmed they are not going to be relegated. So let's look below that. Newcastle United, 29 games in. -1 goal differential, 39 points. I would say they're pretty safe. Brighton, we just saw that, talked about that, 29 games in, +2 goal differential, 37 points. They're in it, but they're pretty safe, I would say. Crystal Palace, European League champions, they're safe, right? 28 games, still have a game in hand, 35 points. I think they can get there even if they have an insidious manager at their home. God bless him, but he is insidious. I understand why he's upset. Eze is coming into his form. I mean, Mateta, is he in Italy? We don't even know where he is. Anyways, Crystal Palace, I think you're going to make it, and I hope you make it because I love you guys. All right, now we get to the really serious part of this. Leeds United, 29 games in, 31 points. Tottenham, 28 games in, 29 points. Nottingham Forest, 29 games in, 28 points. 28 points for West Ham, 19 for Burnley, 16 for Wolverhampton. So I think we can say with the surety, I could say Leicester would win a Premier League title, that Burnley and Wolverhampton are not going to be staying in the Premier League. Daniel, I hate to put you on the spot there. West Ham, Nottingham, Tottenham, Leeds. Who are we thinking? Do you think West Ham's going to stay down? Do we think Nottingham's going to dive deep after a Champions League, Europa League season? Do we think Tottenham's going to do the unexpected and be the biggest piece of shit in Europe? What do you think?
I'll get straight to it and say I think Nottingham Forest is going down. I think there's going to be some great camera cuts to the angry Greek owner that has just showed how much he loathes seeing the team lose and has been very aggressive in some of his approaches in a very public way with players and managers at the club there. So I don't think that the fear that instills in any player is going to stop them from going down with just how well some of the other teams have now started to, you know, play at that point. I think watching the Leeds Manchester City game the other day showed how competitive that Leeds can be, that was a very difficult one goal win for Man City when they were at a very high point in terms of their results. West Ham has really hit this new gear from an attacking standpoint behind some just super exciting young European attackers that are in their early 20s that have been just electric in the last couple of weeks and really started to make some stuff happen for them that are guys that, to be honest, I don't know if they were injured at parts of the season, if they just as younger players are kind of finally starting to catch up to the tempo, the pace of the game, and really being able to now kind of do what they're accustomed to. Like, and that's why they're standing out now. Maybe they have been the whole season and I've just not paid attention to relegation candidate West Ham, but man, like those guys have been tearing it up lately. So it's hard for me to see them not at least drawing multiple games if they continue in that current form. The Tottenham one is now starting to get to the point
Come
where it
on.
actually does feel exciting. It just had felt, 3 weeks ago impossible. Even like a week ago, it just felt like, okay, but like there's not really a way that they go down. Like they're just so much more money and so much higher level of some of the players than these other like it's not possible, but now it is really getting to that point with a lot of the other cellar dwellers getting points and getting results recently in Tottenham not that it's like starting to have those wait, is this really possible? Could this really be a thing that would just
Could it
be
be? Could it
a
be, Daniel?
monumental
Could
it
it
would be
be?
a
Like,
monumental one, but I'm gonna see them finishing just ahead
who
of
do they
Nottingham
beat?
Forest to I don't just
Let's
it
look at it
still
real
can't
quick,
happen.
alright?
I won't let my brain get tricked into this fun storyline to follow. I'm gonna stick to the rational explanation that surely a club of that
So they beat
financial
Tottenham.
output has to stay
Mm.
up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I mean, this is a team that made the knockout phase in the Champions League without even having to do the play-ins, right? They
Newcastle
play
advance into the next round of Champions League as well, who you mentioned at the start of the
yeah,
bottom of the table teams. I mean, it just
and that's
again shows how
yeah.
top the Premier League is right now compared to, I think, all the other leagues in
At
Europe
least
as a whole.
strategically, right? Like, not even, like, talent. I think the talent is wild, like, looking at the lineups, there's just a lot of talent there across the teams, but, like, it may be just be like that
So much
like,
money.
I've
It's just so much money, and
so much money, and also, like, when you're bringing so much money into this, it's a cutting edge of everything where it's like, how
for
can
sure, for sure.
we gain an advantage in this? And so, I mean, if we're talking about the number 1 games I'm looking forward to in the upcoming weeks, it's Tottenham versus Atletico Madrid. The 2 teams, you have no
No.
fucking idea what is gonna happen, right? And then 5 days later, Tottenham plays Liverpool, and then they play the reverse fixture of Madrid, and they play Forest, and they play Sunderland, they play Brighton, they play Wolves. I mean, there's an opportunity, like, where Tottenham actually is in a situation, they have gone over their skis. They're in a reverse fixture with Madrid. They are already in a situation where they don't have the depth to play in the Premier League. They're losing these games against they're losing 2-0 to Tottenham on a red card. They're losing 2-1 to Newcastle. I mean, the only team they can possibly draw against is Man City, which they no longer play anymore. I definitely looked up. So I would say Daniel, maybe we'll just cut this out, right? If there's one team you want to watch the rest of this spring, it should be Tottenham. Tottenham is the most exciting team you can watch. They're on the knife edge of relegation. They're somehow in the Premier League against one of the most erratic teams in Europe, much less Spain, right? And on top of all that, they have one of the most beautiful stadiums in London, much less England. And they have a manager that seriously seems like he does not want to be there. So, yeah, that's my pitch for Tottenham, being a Tottenham fan. What do you think, Danielle? You
He
join in?
seemingly does not wanna be there after having been there a couple of weeks. That has
2
been
days.
a
Yeah, like
a
a
rough
days.
transition period, evidently. I think the craziest scenario of all would be a season that plays out with Tottenham finishing in the bottom 3 of the Premier League, yet somehow making this miraculous Champions League run
Oh,
and
please.
winning the title there to remain in the Premier League for the following season. So, yeah, it's a team that does have that element of interest just because you definitely don't know what's gonna happen when they play, and usually not in a good way.
And yeah, and not a good way in general. Like, who's the talisman of that team? You
Harry
know, like
Kane, man,
Harry
can we
Kane's
just
gone, Son's
can we
gone.
see how much he kept that oh my gosh, the respect I have for that guy after seeing what his departure to Tottenham
Smashing it.
has wrought and just how much he is absolutely dominating the Bundesliga that I mean,
He's
might
doing
be
TikTok dance.
second strongest league in the world right
We'll
now in
see.
terms of top to bottom. But man, like he is just so, so good within that Bayern Munich team. And seeing that lack of a talisman in Tottenham currently does just really highlight the positive impact he had for that club.
True. Unfortunately, we would have to wait for a semifinal between Tottenham and Arsenal in the Champions League. They have to go through Newcastle, Barcelona, much less Atleti. So we'll see how that goes. It's going to be a very interesting Champions League. We'll talk more about that in the upcoming weeks. Daniel, thank you so much for joining. I know it's been a minute. It's been a fun Premier League as well. That'll do it for us at the Football Ball Podcast. It's Mr. Stateside Zach, aka the man without a plan, so it seems. And before we leave, Daniel, Messi, is he playing in the World Cup?
Is there any option that he's not? I didn't realize that was even
I
a
didn't either. Yeah.
possibility.
Okay. Perfect. Great. He's playing in the World Cup. Do you, final question, do you think, because I had this pitched to me today, do you think that Inter Miami loans him out to Barcelona for a swan song, or much less loses him in January of 2027 for a final Champions League farewell? Do you think there's any possibility that Messi goes back to Barcelona?
That's a hard head to put yourself
Let's
into
put
in
it outside of
terms
the
of.
one day. Outside of the one day, like you sign the contract, you retire. Like, is there any way that Lionel Messi plays a Champions League game for Barcelona?
I'm gonna say no. I think
Yeah, I think that's right.
that is probably gonna be more based on Barcelona rather than Messi. I think there might be some, like, potential, feelings that wish he would have stayed with the club for a lower financial amount when they were going through that really dark
Oh God.
phase financially, but he did what was right for him and has really made a very seemingly positive move to the MLS. And so he's a tough one to really advise of what is the right step, but he seemed to really make it at every point of his career. So as long as he's not playing against the USA or France, I'll be hoping it works out well for him, whatever that next step is.
All right. Awesome. You heard it there first. Daniel, Argentine fan, may have German roots. We'll find out. All right. Thanks for tuning into the Football Ball Podcast. This is Zach, aka Mr. Stateside. Thanks for tuning in to the most popular sport and the most popular league as we drive through the ending of this Premier League season and go towards the World Cup. So, yeah, Daniel, you asked me B level superpower musician. What will you choose, right? Going to a bar, karaoke, what have you. If you could take on the vocal qualities and honestly, like mastery of a musician. And I picked Adam Levine. We didn't record that part, but I didn't really fully understand it because I thought B level superpower was more of like B level singer. No offense, but Adam Levine, obviously. But what do you got, Daniel? Now that we're recording things and you're on the record.
Yep. So to clarify the question for anyone answering at home, it is in my eyes, superpower to be able to sing at that quality of, one of the best on the planet, but it's still not a
Adam Levine.
superpower like invisibility, flight, superhuman strength. So it's a superpower in my eyes, but not the biggest superpower out there. And I've had a hard time thinking of who I would take in terms of my ability to mimic a singer, and I think I'm working it down between man, this is a tough one. This will be my final sentence of the pod. I'll have the answer for you. We'll sign off with that today.
Football ball. Football ball.